Hello, everybody. My name is Leticia. Today's presentation is titled Equal Pay for All, the Case for Prevailing Wages in Private Development. I just want to go over some of the reasons why private developers should be paying their employees the prevailing wages. I'm going to be talking about what prevailing wages are and what the difference between a private developer and a public developer is, and some of the economic and social and cultural issues that would result from this decision. Just to start off, my name is Leticia Aguirre once again. Some of my hobbies include baseball, walking outdoors, cooking, coloring, playing board games with my family, and some of my more construction related information is that I am a construction management major here at Fresno State. I am currently working towards a bachelor's degree at this college. I am interested in construction labor issues, and of more recently, I've had my eyes open to things like wage theft and misclassifying employees. So that kind of ties into what I'm going to be talking about next, which is what prevailing wages are. A prevailing wage is somewhat of a minimum wage for a construction worker that is working for a public project, and a public project can be considered a construction project that is typically funded by a government body, and it's sourced through taxpayer money. And at the end of its construction building process, it would be normally occupied by the public and owned by the public and used by the public. Whereas a private developer and a private project, on the other hand, would be owned by an individual and funded by an individual. So that's really important when determining what rights construction workers have towards their wages and their labor and their benefits for their work. Construction workers on public projects are typically processed. They're typically protected by labor laws that allow them to be paid fairly, and this prevents their employers from determining their wages based on lower paid individuals and non-local labor. Uh, so this was enforced by the Davis-Bacon Act, and this was a law that was passed um, requiring federal construction projects to pay workers for prevailing wages. Um, these local wages are determined by two ways. They're either determined by surveys taken of wages from workers on similar construction projects, or uh, they are determined by a prevailing rate set by the U.S. Department of Labor that aligned with the with the Davis-Bacon Act. Here at the bottom right, we have a picture of Robert L. Bacon, who was part of the House of Representatives at the time. And here at the upper left, we have James J. Davis, who was a senator. Ensuring prevailing wages in private projects is essential, and that's the main point I want to drive home today. Private developers shouldn't be exempt from paying prevailing wages for construction projects, and this affects uh, contractors and subcontractors because they commonly commit wage theft against their workers in an effort to produce low bid construction projects. It is unethical to undercut construction workers. We need to protect workers from being exploited. If we were to get this passed and have our construction workers being paid prevailing wages, safer buildings would be created as a result from workers who have more pride in their work, uh, and this would also result in lower safety violations. The country's economy would be benefited, and thus, as us as a whole, even those of us who aren't construction workers would benefit from everyone being treated fairly and everybody getting paid right. Uh, to elaborate more on the economic impact, an increase in our country's GDP would result from fair wages. Calculating GDP is a way for economists to determine how well we live in our country. And this is calculated by the total number of consumption, um, total investments, government spending, and net exports, as we see here in the formula. When undermined, construction workers get paid fairly, they get paid more, and as a result, they feel more comfortable spending money and adding to the consumption and the business investments part of the equation here on the GDP equation. So that increases our economy's GDP. As for the social and cultural influences, um, wage fairness can increase the likelihood of a good work-life balance, which benefits um, the breadwinner of the family and can provide a better home life for individuals. Higher wages and family health for individuals can also result from higher wages. Prevailing wages can support immigrant laborers who are often exploited by contractors to support competitive bids. This is very important and very common. Immigrants make up to 20% of the workforce in the construction industry, as stated by the University of Michigan. Um, these people face wage theft through fear and intimidation tactics that usually are used by construction workers, and they are usually threatened with lose being laid off if they ever try to go against these labor issues and wage theft issues. Some of my source materials come from procore.com, which is a very good source for information regarding prevailing wages. For GDP calculations, here we have Corporate Finance Institute that has um, a good presentation regarding how this GDP is calculated and more about uh, how it defines the U.S. GDP. Information on immigrants in construction is there. This says database, but it is owned by the University of Michigan. In conclusion, paying prevailing wages should be required for all developers, not just those working on public projects. An employee does the same amount of work whether he or she happen to be working on a public or privately owned project. So it is natural to assume that they should be paid fairly for both scenarios. Paying workers shouldn't be considered a luxury, it should be considered a moral obligation. Thank you guys.